Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session with Joe Pitawanakwat. We are very excited to host another uh, interesting conversation about the wonderful world of plants. My name is Jody Williams, and I'm the Indigenous Education Coordinator for the Dufferin Peel Catholic District School Board, and I'm here with my colleague, Kalinda.
I'm Kalinda Klein. I'm the curriculum lead for First Nation, Métis, and Inuit education in Upper Grand District School Board. And welcome to everyone from both of our boards.
So we're going to turn it over to Joe now, who will dazzle us with his incredible amount of information. And we would like to invite you, if you haven't done so, for the teachers who are watching out there, we have sent out a link, which you can also find in the description box on the YouTube that you're looking at right now. In the description is also the link to the form if you have any questions, and we will moderate those. We may not get to all of them, but if you have questions that come up, please put those on the form and we will ask Joe on your behalf. So we will be in the background with our cameras off and turn it over to Joe, who will introduce himself and take it away.
All righty. Perfect. Okay. So this is going to be super fun. I wanted to share with everybody one of my favorite things. Oh man, and I keep saying that, but I have one of my favorite plants is called Gaakamish. Gaakamish is northern prickly ash, and this is one of my favorite medicines to kind of teach people how important it is to be a little bit more careful when you're walking around. Well, be a little bit more careful because it looks kind of crazy with all the tines and those hurt, but be a little bit more careful just in the sense of, like, sometimes we don't even really know what we're passing when we're in the forest. Sometimes we don't even really take a second, give ourselves the chance to be able to spend some time with plants, and we end up missing out on a lot when we're just too fast paced, and we're just walking or running along the trail or running through the forest and not taking a second to just kind of see everything that we're passing. And so this is a really, really good medicine, a really, really good plant to be able to give you that opportunity to take a step back and say, hey, what is all of this stuff? Because northern prickly ash, it's just coming out now, but this is the most northern species of citrus tree on the planet. And so this is in the same family as oranges and limes and lemons, but this is the most northern variety of a citrus tree that we have in this on the planet. And and you could taste it too. The berries, well, they're not really berries. There's a seed that has a skin on the outside. See the little black circles? Those are the seed, and the seed has a little casing, this little pinkish, orangish, reddish casing, and that casing will open up and release the seed. But that skin or that casing smells and tastes exactly like orange peels. But, like, you know how if ever you bite an orange peel, it tastes super bitter, and you're like, wow, what the heck is that? There's no bitter taste. It's just the flavor of orange peel, and it's kind of super weird for your brain too, because whenever you eat an orange and you get a couple pieces of the peelings or the white pith that's in the center of the orange, it has a really strong bitter taste. And so every time you eat orange, you have this experience of, like, man, that tasted, that there was something bitter about that, but you really like the orange. Well, with this, it's no bitter, it's just orange, and your brain is like, what is this? Without all that bitter stuff, this is fantastic. And so it tastes really, really good. And in order to, like, just fill your mouth with the most outrageous amount of flavor, you only need the tiniest little bit. Like, like you see you could take one half of one of these sort of seed casings and kind of break it open and put that in your mouth, and your mouth will be completely overwhelmed for like 4 hours. So it's a really, really strong little plant. But the leaves as well, the leaves are going to come out right where that bud is. And the leaves come out, and if you touch the leaves and you kind of crush them up in your fingers a little bit, it's going to smell and taste exactly like the the rind of a lime. And it's like really, really, really strong flavor. But when it dries, it completely loses all of that flavor. The leaves smell and taste like absolutely nothing once they're dry. So you could only use it fresh. And so one of the reasons why I wanted to spend some time on this kind of medicine today, the Gaakamish, northern prickly ash, is because it's a really good teacher to be able to show us that that Anishinaabe people have a cuisine, have a taste, have a flavor. We have flavor in our food. And that's never taught, as far as I'm concerned, or as far as I know. Whenever you think about the way Anishinaabe food tastes, the way Anishinaabe food, the way that we used to eat in this part of the world, the way that it's portrayed, the way that we were taught, is like everything is just brown. Like our skin is brown, our clothes are buckskin brown, our houses are bark brown, our food is all just dried deer meat brown, with maybe a little bit of blueberries, and we're just kind of like, what the heck, what is this? Like I was always even like a little bit ashamed growing up, because like everything is just brown, like we must have been real plain people. But now I'm reminded of how colorful everything was and how flavorful everything is. All of these different tastes and flavors are bursting out of the forest now. Colors are migrating here from the jungles. All of the birds are coming back, and you could see, like, if you spend the dawn out in the middle of a forest right now, or like, within the next week or so, there's so much birds that come here. And so just one real quick thing about that, the knowledge that we have to be able to live in this part of the world is immense. And I just wanted to spend time so that we understand that it's very colorful, it's vibrant, and it tastes really good. So color is one thing. Like I was always kind of like buckskin brown clothes and houses made of bark. So it's just kind of like we're like right now, like I appreciate the color that I'm surrounded by, just in my home, artwork everywhere. And so it's really, really nice. It's really appealing for me visually. My home, we work to make it like attractive. So surely the Anishinaabe did the same thing, and you could see this. We had um, uh, different ceremonies and gatherings that we would do. We call them jingtomok in Anishinaabe language. Is just a gathering, and we'll call them powwows now. But where we used to gather and have social events. One of the things about these is that the Anishinaabe doing this would have two different sets of regalia. So all of the different beads and feathers and artwork that we wear and represents who we are, while we dance and sing. We have two sets. We have one for the daytime and one for the nighttime. What's really cool about this is all of the feathers that we use to create those, the regalia that we use in these types of gatherings and celebrations is, we use feathers from birds, and there's two different kinds basically. there's birds that will use light refraction, so they will reflect the light in order to create the color. So like a blue jay, if you ever see a blue jay and a blue jay is blue in the sun, bright blue flying, and then it lands in the shade and it looks black. Because there's no sunlight shining directly on the feathers, and so there's no color to be seen. So those feathers, and hummingbirds as well, there's feathers that use light refraction. Of course, these are the ones that we use throughout the day, but then there's feathers that have true pigment, and those are the ones that we use for the nighttime. And so we will change regalias to something like a cardinal has a true red pigmented feather, and like a northern flicker has bright yellow pigmentation on the bottom of the feathers. And so we could utilize these two different things. And so, like, you can imagine, and every species of bird that we have, we could get every color that you can ever imagine from all the birds that live here. And when we catch them, we don't kill them, we use foothold traps. So you put a pole in the middle of a marsh and that pole has a little dimple that you kind of rest in a perch, and put a little noose, just a little noose. And when the bird lands on the perch, the perch is gonna fall, and then they get caught in the foothold. And like Ojibwe foothold bird trap or whatever, you could Google it up. It's kind of cool. They've been in all over. This kind of practices exists in museums and things like that now, but it's what we used to do to catch all of the different types of birds and remove all of the feathers that they're molting, all of the shedding feathers. And so we knew each species of bird's molting period and where to catch them, how to catch them, so that we didn't even really kill them. We took their feathers, we took their colors, and we applied that to our life. So the same thing with our food. When you're looking at our food, we have all different colors and flavors and tastes, and all of these were used. My grandma, when my grandma, she grew up like right in the forest. She didn't see a car until she was like 13. She actually didn't see money until she was like 12. So she was right in the woods. And so we try to, like, we bring her out to the city, and we're like, hey, well, let's go. We'll take you to a Japanese restaurant. You could taste like authentic Japanese flavored food, Indian restaurant. And so we try to, like, expose her to these different types of cultures and tastes. And every time she would go out and eat at these kinds of restaurants, she would say the same thing. She'd be like, you know what? This is how my mom cooked, like, with so much flavor and so much work. Like, she would work all day to cook, and the flavor inside of her food would just be so overwhelming for your face. And so it's just kind of like, whoa, like this. And so the amount of flavor that was in Japanese food, that was in Indian food, and Northern European countries as well, like all of the different cuisines that come from all different parts of the world, it reminded her of her mom's cooking. And I was always like, psh, like, what'd you guys eat? Like squash and deer meat, like. And the missing piece was understanding medicine knowledge, understanding plants, and how plants, we use them all for medicine. Like, we harvest over 180 different species of plants so that we have their medicine. Like, this is our pharmacy. This is where we go when we're sick and we need to feel better. But it's also your urban spice rack. And so when things like residential schools and all of these different situations kind of were responsible for removing medicinal knowledge, so we don't know how to pick, we don't a lot where we lost the ability to understand how to harvest all of these different types of medicine. So we lost the ability to have our urban spice rack. So we lost our flavor and we lost our cuisine. And so it's really, really fun now to just kind of realize that, well, we didn't actually lose it, that we still have it, and it's important for us to learn about and experience. And so learning about medicine, you learn about flavor and you learn about taste, and this one is just really really amazing teacher to be able to show us this how important it is um, to cook your food. So a turtle, you guys all know turtles, they breathe through their butt in the winter. They got a lot of real unusual characteristics. But one thing is that a turtle's mouth can't water. You know how like you smell really good food and your mouth is going to water? A turtle can't do that, unfortunately for the turtle. So they can only eat underwater. So they'll grab their food and eat underwater. And it's hilarious because, um, well, my dad, he had surgery and radiation all in his mouth and in his throat. So he has no more salivary glands in his mouth can't water, and so we always joke he should have like a fish tank that he could put on, and so that he could enjoy his food underwater, because actually the only reason how you're able to taste your food is when your mouth waters. The taste buds don't work if they're not wet. This is why like smokers or people who have problems with the dry mouth, they can't taste food. So when your mouth waters, that gives you the ability and the opportunity to be able to taste the food. And it's really, really amazing with this kind of medicine because you put a little bit inside of a dish, you put a little bit in the food, and that's this plant's responsibility, is to make your mouth water like crazy. If you take a half, I wish I was with everybody in person, I would put a little piece inside of your mouth, and in 3 minutes, like everybody would mouth would just be like you couldn't even keep all the fluid in your face. And so you use this with the food that you're cooking, it tastes so much better. You're able to, it amplifies your ability to taste all the different flavors in that dish. So it's super, super important in our cuisine to unlock the flavor of everything else that we use inside of that dish, as well as providing a really deep, not bitter, orange or citrus type of taste. Uh, the Latin name for this plant is called Zanthoxylem americanus. Zanthoxylem is the same family of trees as a Szechuan pepper. So this is like an Anishinaabe Szechuan peppers, this whole region of Asia that is known for growing Szechuan peppers, and incorporating it into all different levels of their cuisine and trading it throughout the rest of Asia. Like this spice really made that part of the world famous. And so, but we have our own Szechuan peppers. They taste pretty good too. And so there's a lot of real cool things to understand about this one. But it's a really good one to kind of just say, like, you know, this plant grows all over the GTA, all over southern Ontario, southwestern Ontario, all the way to Ottawa, and then even into the north a little bit. And so it has a massive distribution, and the chances of us being able to find it are really high. So I kind of wanted to share this with you guys so that you're able to see the what it looks like, and kind of keep your eyes out when you're outside to until so you could find it, and so that you can, you know, experience that taste and that flavor, and then to sort of gesture at the rest of the forest and say, what other flavors are here? How can I, what can I use in my cooking out here? And so it's a real amazing sort of process to be able to think about. But with this one too, it's kind of easy to identify because it has massive, really, really sharp tines. These thorns are really cool because, I mean, they're really not cool because every other tree will make a thorn, and the whole thorn will be alive. But this tree will kill the tip of the thorn. So the tip of the thorn is dead. And when a thorn is green, when a thorn is fresh and not dead, it's like really flexible. So you can get poked and like, you know, it's fine. It kind of hurts. But this one, it'll kill the tip of the thorn, kill the tip of the tine, so that if you get poked, the tip breaks off and it embeds under your skin, or inside of your hand, or your legs or whatever. And so it doesn't just hurt, like, no, it really hurts. So it's easy to identify for that reason, but it can kind of hurt too. And so most of us, I wonder if some of us are watching this now and saying, I know exactly what this plant is, because you've had an experience with it before. But when we go and harvest it, we, like, my hand is just full of a million little holes, and it's just the kind of the price I pay. Like, there's no way I'm gonna go a year without picking these. These have to be in my house. I have to use these in my cooking. They're absolutely necessary. The flavor that they have is just so insane. Anyways, I wanted to share with you sort of like the medicine too, because plants are medicine and we use them in our cooking. We use them to access different flavors, but there's a medicinal purpose for this plant, and it's for your mouth. Um, it's medicine for your mouth, and you could kind of see the like the roots of the prickly ash. I mean, the tines of the prickly ash can kind of look like the roots of your teeth. And if you rip the tines off of the branch, off of the stem, it'll leave a scar on the branch that looks just like a molar crown too. And then you look at the fruit and you're like, hey, I can't zoom in closer, unfortunately, but you could kind of see, like, it looks like your tongue. Like, there's little bumps, little lumpies and bumpies all over the skin, and it's got this pretty, like, reddish pinkish color, just like your tongue, and all those little lumps, just like all the taste buds. And that's what it helps with. And so the identity of this tree's medicinal value or therapeutic potential is embedded in the identity of the tree. And so it's easy to remember when we see it this way. And this is the part of your body that this medicine helps with, and a lot too. Like, I don't know if anybody has, like, siblings who are teething. um when your teeth come in, it hurts a lot. Or if you've ever had a toothache, or if you've ever had surgery on your mouth, or if you get braces put in. When you get braces put in, the amount of pain that your mouth is able to generate is insane. Like, you could have siblings, babies, weeping for months of their life because of the amount of pain that's inside of their face. And this medicine, you put one of these, like a half of this little piece of this plant inside of your mouth, in 5 minutes, all the pain is gone. So no more aching teeth from braces, no more uh, um, uh, soreness after surgery. And for teething babies, this is really, really important for us. We put it in a little bag or put it in the pillowcase, and then the baby just kind of gnaws on it all night, and just takes all of their pain away, and they drool way more too. Like, just real wet face all the time. So this medicine's really important role. There's only three, mainly one, but there's only three types of bacteria that can build up in your mouth. If you ever smell bad breath, like, there's only three types of bacteria that can build up in your mouth, and this medicine is going to get rid of all three of those. So it plays a super, super important role in giving you what you need to keep your mouth happy and healthy, so that you'll be 80 years old with a full set of teeth. And one of the last things that I kind of want to say too is that the in archaeology, archaeologists, like somebody who is digging up old sites of Anishinaabe who used to live here 10,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago. One of the things that they're able to realize or understand is that when they're working with Anishinaabe people and they're working with a grave site, it doesn't matter how old these people are, they always had a full set of teeth. They could be 90 years old, 95, 100 years, over 100 years old. They have a full set of adult teeth that were most likely white when they died. Of course, they decay and they're not white anymore, but a lot less stained than some other teeth that they could find as archaeologists. But they're able to see, like, that's one thing that was consistent among the Anishinaabe people, is that we kept our teeth very late into our lives. And it's one of the reasons why we were able to live so long, is because we were always able to eat the food that we needed. If you lose all of your teeth, you lose the ability to really eat. And if you can't eat, then you don't have the nutrition to stay alive. So this is really important to give your mouth everything that it needs to become healthy. Because if those bacteria grow inside of your mouth and you have bad breath, then the bacteria causes infections and inflammation. That's why you lose your teeth. And that's why they rot. So this is really, really important. And you can imagine, if this medicine is giving us the ability to taste our then it was used, and it was very, very common in like almost every dish that we would create. So always cleaning our mouth with the food that we were eating. This is where this idea of food as medicine comes from, I think, is because our food is cooked in medicine. And so just eating, we're providing that therapy to our body. So this is a really, really amazing medicine to share with you, so you can understand how to take care of a very important part of your body, to understand a really amazing history that we have, but then also to just sort of hope that you can find this at some point throughout the summer and experience the world's most northern species of citrus tree, our citrus tree, and the taste and flavor that it has, and then to gesture out at the rest of the forest and say, like, what other kind of tastes and flavors are out here? And what therapy do those plants have? What part of my body do those other plants help to fix? Uh, so, so this is one of my favorites, Gaakamish, Zanthoxylem americanus, or northern prickly ash. Gaak is a porcupine. And so you could see why we call it Gaakamish, a porcupine tree, because it hurts just as much as a porcupine. But yeah, so thank you for tuning in so far. I wonder if any questions came in.
There are quite a few questions, Joe. So what I'm going to do, just so
Good.
folks know that sent in the questions, I'm only going to ask the ones that are related to what you were talking about. So we're going to look at the ones that talk specifically about the plant. So there were some folks who are asking, is this particular plant indigenous to this area? And sort of like, what would be the geography of this plant? And then connected to that, a couple of folks asked is, is it rare? So how would connected to sustainable harvesting? Could you speak to that?
Mhm. Okay, perfect. Yeah, for sure. So the plant's natural range is in the Carolinian forest. So starting in the Bruce Peninsula, going down into southwestern Ontario and the GTA. But this band of forests kind of arches around down into the States and into North and South Carolina. And that's where it kind of ends at the coast. And that forest, the Carolinian forest, which you guys are in right now, is actually a border between, like, it's a border in the south between, that separates a temperate forest, which is where we live. Where temperate meaning that it changes winter seasonally, so winter, spring, summer, fall, and after that, after the Carolinas, you have tropical forests, which don't change. They're always green. And so that Carolinian forest, that big band of forest that starts in Toronto, is actually what separates the winter from the jungles and tropical areas. And that's where this plant will naturally grow. So it'll grow right from Toronto all the way to the Carolinas, but its importance as our medicine, this plant's importance in our culinary art, in the food that we create, made it so that made it so that we would bring it and plant it throughout our communities in Ontario. And so you could generally find it like into not the far north, but like in and around Sudbury, and Manitoulin Island. You could get it up into the north as well, but that's because we brought it there. We brought it out of its natural range because we like it so much, and we want to have access to this medicine all the time. So we bring our medicine with us wherever we go.
Has this plant been affected by any pests? So someone asked like ash borer or any other like pests that, and about the sustainable part. So would there be lots of it that folks wouldn't
Oh
have
yeah.
to be concerned about harvesting?
Oh yeah, for sure. Okay, so there's a lot. It's not an uncommon plant at all. Plus kind of like the part that of it that we use, just the skin of the seed, or the branches, I guess. You don't ever kind of harvest, like take the whole thing. Actually, this is a really cool question. So there's no concern around it. And when you actually do pick it, if you're taking some of the branches, we make teething necklaces with, because that medicine to remove the pain in your teeth, or in the baby's teeth, is in the bark as well. And the bark is hollow. I mean, the stems are hollow, so you could run a string through them and make a necklace. And babies will just grab everything and shove it inside of their mouth. So any necklace that you have on, it's going to end up in their mouth if you're holding a baby. So if you have this bark, these branches on as a necklace, of course you take the tines off, but the baby will put this in their mouth and feel the relief and say, "Hey, holy man, that feels so good. Oh, the pain in my mouth is gone. That necklace helped with this. That taste, that flavor. I need to remember that." And more often than not, they're able to like already be using plant medicine, before they could even talk. They know what they need. And they're like, "You don't have your necklace on. You're not going to hold me." And things like that. So that's a really cool idea. And yeah, so there's no concern on about harvesting this. And actually, when you do pick it, you're going to be causing there to be more that will grow. This plant will not make seeds if it's left alone. If you don't bother it, it's not going to make if it's not going to make seeds, it's not going to spread. But when you go there and you kind of take a couple branches off, or remove a couple of the trees, it fights back, and it's like it makes tons of fruit and tons of seeds. And yeah, there's no pests either, because this plant is antimicrobial to your mouth, to clean your mouth. It's also the most, out of every single plant that has ever been tested and studied on this planet, prickly ash. It's not actually an ash. It just looks like an ash. It's a citrus tree. But prickly ash is the most antifungal out of every single component, every single plant that has ever been tested on the planet. This one is the most antifungal. And so that's what we actually worry about with species and with medicine and with plants is fungus. Like we've had just a few fungus that come in from, I think most of them have come from Japan, where that's completely annihilating the bat populations in Ontario right now, white nose fungus. And then there was a fungus that was responsible for destroying species of trees, and so completely changed the landscape of this entire province, and this whole georegion was fungus. We're very scared of fungus, because once one comes in that's not supposed to be here, everything is going to be gone, like bats pretty soon. So this one being extremely antifungal, it has its own protection from such insults, and so it's pretty safe to be engaging with, and actually even better for the plant for us to be engaging with it.
So someone asked about when does the plant grow and when would be harvesting season?
Yeah, well, that's really cool because the plant is always there. The tree is always there. So for oral hygiene, if you want to keep your mouth happy and healthy, the bark is always going to be there. And the tines are always going to be there too. So you'll generally always be able to find it. But the and other trees that look like it, like locust trees, there's nothing dangerous there for misidentifying it. That's a very easily identifiable tree, especially because of the smell and taste of the leaves, which are coming out now. And then the fruits will probably be ready. They'll be green by the end of July. They'll actually be hot. They'll actually be kind of spicy by the middle or to the end of July. And then throughout August, the seeds will ripen. They'll turn from green to bright red. And when they're bright red, holy man, you get to put a little piece of that in your mouth and you're gonna lose your marbles. Like, you didn't even know this taste was there. Right there. You were walking past it your whole life. A taste like that. It's really, really cool. But yeah, that's probably the timing throughout most of Ontario. Kind of keep your eye out anywhere from now for the leaves and to about the end of August. It'll start to the seeds and everything is all the berries. Everything is just going to fall off.
So someone asked if you could put the image up again. So we're just gonna, that'll be our last one for now, just so people can see. Because do you have a bigger picture too of a further away version?
No, I just have these
You
three.
just have the close-ups. That's all right. They can look it up. That's what Google is useful for not for all the rest of the information, but to get the bigger image. Then yeah, some folks were worried about how much does it hurt when you get prickled by that? That was one last question.
Well, it's not like a bee sting, but it's almost, it doesn't feel good. But you can avoid it. Like, I'm sure there's much more dangerous and hurtful things that you kind of weasel your way in and around on a daily basis. But yeah, it kind of doesn't tickle.
Well, Joe, I think for all the parents who are teachers that might be listening, they're probably thinking, oh, this would have been good information when my kid was teething. Because
Oh man.
I know I've lived through many years of teething and recently too. So, I think, this is why we do these, provide these information sessions for students and teachers, because we really want people to start to begin to understand how sophisticated and incredible Indigenous knowledge systems are. And in this case, we're showcasing Anishinaabe knowledge. And just, I think you touched on it too, Joe, about what was lost and what we're now gaining back thanks to people like yourself who are just living this beautiful, wonderful life and then sharing it back with all of us. So, thank you so much for spending the morning with us. And if you have, I don't know if yourself or Kalinda, if you have any final comments you want to share with everyone before we say farewell.
Go outside. Find it.
Yes, get outside. That's your homework, kids.
That's really good homework. And I know that I told Joe that I've been listening to all of his podcasts, and it's making me slow down when I go for the walks and to look and see what's there. And so I think that's a great idea for you to get outside and do the same. So Chimigwech, everyone, for coming. And Shimigwech to Joe again.
Well, thank you all for watching, and stay tuned for more. We do have another session that's been shared out on the email, and hopefully you'll tune in for that session. And again, thank you so much, Joe and Kalinda and everyone, for spending the morning with us. Take care, stay safe, and go outside. Get out there and enjoy it.